My name's Dr. Matt. I've got people in here that have been with me for 7 or 8 years. I've got my parents sitting in the front row. We got medical professionals in the house. It should be a fun night. So I'm going to talk about. So let me take you back a little bit. When in the previous years, pre-COVID, we used to do workshops like this all the time, which some of you guys have been to. We used to do prime nutrition, prime movement, prime sleep, and prime mindset all live. But then COVID happened and we went virtual and we never really stopped. I've gotten tired of doing that material over and over and over again. And I found that there's a lot of conversations in here that revolve around topics that I don't really touch on in those workshops. I think it's important you guys have an understanding, but also my perspective, because I'm coming at it at a very different place. Most professionals in America, when it comes to healthcare, are coming from an allopathic perspective. And allopathic simply means they're treating symptoms. And there's nothing wrong with that. We need those kinds of professionals in the world, but the problem with that is it's the superficial layer. No one's ever talking to you about how do you address the root problems. And really, it's not their fault. They're just not trained on it. You know, medical doctors, they go to school for 4 or 5 years, and they're learning mostly around pharmacology, drugs. So they're really good at that. You ask them a question about that, they know that. I get one class. All right, so if you asked me about your medication, I'd say, I don't know, tell me about it. What is it? I have no idea. I ask people all the time when they tell me about what they're on, I say, what's that for? Because I don't know. I get 1/4 of it. My training is entirely on nutrition and neurology. That's where I learn, and that's what I know about. So I'm able to have conversations, deep conversations with people around this stuff because I know a lot more about it. And that's what tonight's going to be. So in my workshops that I've done in the past, nutrition specifically, we talk about all the stuff you should be eating and all the stuff you should probably be avoiding too. And if you haven't taken that workshop or heard it before, I'd encourage you to go into the vault where all those videos are housed and check that one out. It's a critical one, and we have resources attached to it. We've got grocery lists, we've got PDF manuals. I'd encourage all you guys to take a look at it because regardless of if you think your diet's good or not, if your diet isn't up to par, it's going to affect what we're doing in here. It impacts your nervous system negatively, which takes you back the other direction. My goal is for you guys to be healthier. So the stuff that doesn't get covered in nutrition is all the other things that are in your house that are toxifying your life and your body. And that's what we're going to talk about tonight. I find for most people in healthcare, you're suffering from one of two things. You either have a toxicity problem or you have a deficiency problem. There's a very, very small percentage of you that might have a genetic issue, but the majority of you, it's either you're deficient in something, which we'll talk about. There's 5 things you could be deficient in, or you've got too much toxicity in your body. And I can't cover all the toxic problems we've got in America today because there's a lot of them, but I'm going to cover some of the biggest ones, okay? All right. So I'm going to start with a story that I heard, I was part of it when I was in chiropractic school. It was my last quarter. Chiropractic school, you have 14 quarters. We take 30 hours every single quarter. 13th and 14th quarter are kind of like our last opportunity to be working in clinical settings where we're learning about how to take care of people, essentially. And in that setting, I got to be friends with this girl named Mel. Mel was in the same quarter as me. So we're going through clinicals together and just, learning a lot about what's going on with our practice members and our patients and also, internally, like what we're setting up to do. And Mel had a really big issue with her mom. Her mom, they lived in Nashville. Her mom got diagnosed with stage 4 brain cancer in our 13th quarter. And they gave her 4 weeks to live. So Mel was obviously distraught, and that was a really hard time for her. But we had gone through so much in class and school in terms of what you could do to essentially make the body healthier, not just treat the symptoms. And all Mel's mom was getting at that point was treating of symptoms. Chemotherapy, radiation, while it can be helpful, what they're doing there is they're treating the cancer. They're not helping her get healthier. In fact, that actually pulls her further that direction, I would contend. So anyways, she did some of that stuff, but she was getting really frustrated at that point because none of it had worked. And so she kind of sworn off everything. And Mel was obviously very upset about that. But Mel also understood some of the stuff I knew. So she went home to Nashville every weekend during that process and cleaned her mom's cupboards out, cleaned out her house, made sure all the toxicities in her house were gone. And that was 2014. 2013, 2014, somewhere in there. That was when that happened. Fast forward to today, her mom's still alive, doing really, really well. Cool to see. So I'm going to be talking to you about some of these things that she incorporated with her mom so you can incorporate it with your life. Now, toxicities, like I mentioned, there's a lot of them, but toxicities, it's a buildup of too much in your body. We'll talk about when you're deficient and getting not enough, but toxicities is really around too much. And there's a lot of things that I think you guys are going to be aware of in here, and there might be a lot of things that you're not. This first one we're going to talk about is plastics. Plastics is becoming a thing. You know, people are talking about it a lot more. I think it's just going to get more and more intense. Do you guys know how much an average American consumes of plastic every week? Credit cards worth of plastic. Bingo. Wow. One credit card a week. A week. Yeah, pretty scary. So, and it equates to, I think, a half a pound a year of just plastic. Now, how do you get it? Where do you find this plastic? It's not like you're just taking a credit card and eating it, right, Steve? Okay. You're getting it from the fish you eat. Fish are swimming in water full of plastic from all of our dumping and toxic waste that gets in there. Okay, that's one of the ways. It's from the water bottles, the plastic waters. Everybody's familiar with the plastic water bottles at this point, and if you aren't, welcome to the show. But also, it's the food at the restaurants. What do they package that stuff in? And then when you go to the grocery store and you get your vegetables that are organic, what do you put them in? So this is where we're getting it. I don't think you're going to be 100% clear of it at this point in America because they're everywhere. It's on our clothes too. Like this shirt right here that I'm wearing, it's really nice, but it's polyester. And guess what polyester is made out of primarily? So it's getting into our bodies from that. I don't think we're perfect. I won't be perfect either. But I think it's important that we start to pay attention to this stuff. It's not just the food though. Think about the lotions and the soaps you have at home. What are those packaged in? That stuff leaches too because all those things are chemicals and those chemicals pull that out. A lot of people used to say, this was when I was in school, we were really concerned about the heating up of plastic, which was the issue with like a water bottle, for example. The water bottle is not hot when you get it, but it's usually coming from somewhere other than Colorado, and it's getting shipped over in a truck. And is that truck refrigerated when it's bringing over? No, it's typically getting hit by the heat in the desert as it's coming over from California. So that plastic's getting leached in the water bottle. But what we know now is it's not just heat, it's cold too. If you put like a freezer bag, which I've been guilty of, you put something in a freezer bag and stick it in the freezer, guess what? That plastic leaches into the food. So again, we're not looking to be 100%, but we are looking to start changing some of this stuff. One of the biggest things we can start changing is just, instead of putting it into a plastic Tupperware container, put it into a glass one. That's one of the simplest changes we can start to make, okay? And we're going to talk about more of this stuff in a second, and I've got a lot of action steps for you guys to take. I don't expect you doing everything I'm going to mention tonight, but if you just take 10 to 20% of it, I think about this analogy a lot. If you look at these pilots on an airplane, they're going from LA to New York. Their direct route is whatever it is, but if they change it just by 1 degree, they can end up in Miami. Because it's a long distance and they're changing course just a little bit. And the same thing goes for your health. You don't have to do everything I'm telling you tonight, but if you do 1%, 2%, change course just a little bit, it's going to make a huge difference. All right, now this one, I was talking with Anna about this earlier today. Colorado, Denver specifically, is the 6th worst place for air quality in the country. Come on in, Deborah. That's Colorado, Denver. Anna's coming from Colorado Springs, so we're talking about Colorado Springs. They're 23rd, so they're doing a little bit better than us, but not a lot. We've got really tough problems here because of the mountains primarily, but it insulates us. And if you look in the summertime with all the smoke that comes through here, a lot of times it's not even Colorado that's doing the smoke. It's Montana or Oregon or Washington. And it just sticks here and doesn't move. We used to practice in San Diego years ago, and San Diego had tons of fires around it, but it never really stayed there because the ocean was clearing it out with the breeze. We don't have that opportunity here, so we deal with it. And if you look at your cell phone, how many of you guys have iPhones? Show of hands. Okay, so majority of the room. I don't know what the Google equivalent of the weather app is, but if you look at your weather app on your iPhone, it's kind of misleading because it'll say if you have some lung condition, don't go outside, or be easy on your exercise. I disagree with that. I think nobody should be doing that stuff because if you don't have a lung condition and you're doing it, eventually you will have a lung condition because it's just all the pollution getting into your body. So it's really important to pay attention to that. Okay, here's the big one that I think most people should be making changes to right now. Lotions, potions, skincare products. This is where when people come in and they tell me they've been eating really well and they don't understand why they have chemical stress, this is the conversation. And it's a deep one. So I'm not going to go into all of it, and I don't have time typically on the table to either. But when I talk about lotions, potions, and soaps and products like that, you've got to understand that the fragrance coming from that lotion is typically poison. It's toxic. Those fragrances aren't normal. On very, very rare occasions, you'll see us light up a candle in here. And it's only if the restaurant next door decided to do something funky and the smell's leaking in here. It's the only time you'll smell it because we use essential oils. Essential oils don't have a toxicity to them. Not that you guys need to light up essential oils, but be really careful with the candles you're putting in because you're inhaling that toxic fume. Same thing goes with those air fresheners you plug into the wall. That stuff isn't normal for your body. The thing about technology, it's wonderful, but it doesn't make you healthier. The further we get away from what we did 10,000 years ago, the more unhealthy we're going to become. My generation is the first generation expected to not outlive my parents. My kids' generation is the second one not expected to outlive the parents. It's not getting better. We're getting further and further away from health. It's not because our doctors are stupid, but they can't save you. The only way to save you is to start getting back to some of these basics and going the other direction. Because the more technology we get, the worse off it becomes. And that's essentially what I'm trying to get to today. Fragrances are lovely. I love fragrance. I love it. I used to have colognes all over the place, but I've gone away from it. And let me tell you why. My father-in-law is the most fragrant man, in a good way, that I've ever smelled. Okay? He sprays this, I think it's called Bond 7 or Bond 9 is the name of his cologne. I don't know where he gets it. It's super powerful. Thing about it is, he goes to my house, he comes in, he flies in, he stays for a weekend. When he leaves, his smell lingers for like 2 weeks. Yeah, so here's an interesting story about that. He's just retiring now. He's the president of a chiropractic college in the Bay Area, and he's got all these different neurology doctors and different people on his staff there. And so he used them to his advantage because he's been having a hard time with his testosterone. And he's wondering if he should get the pellet injections, which is totally, he doesn't want to do, but he's also like, what do I do? And he goes to the neurologist on campus and does some testing. And the neurologist, his testosterone is non-existent. He's got none of it. So that was obvious. He knew that. He's on the weekends curled up on the couch, doesn't want to move, has no energy. He's just, we thought it was stress, but it's low testosterone. But the neurologist told him, if you start supplementing testosterone, because your body has been so warped by all the toxicities in it, it mistakes testosterone for estrogen. So he just takes all this fake testosterone, the pellets, and puts it in his body, and his body's not going to make more testosterone, it's just going to make more estrogen. Estrogen's a big problem. It's a cancer-causing issue. It disrupts your hormones. We're going to talk about that tonight. But anyways, long story short, I think his issue primarily stems from all the fragrances he's been dumping onto his body, disrupting everything. Now his body's in chaos. So not to say that you don't use it, but use it sparingly and be conscious of it because the fragrance isn't healthy. Neither are sulfates. You guys know what sulfates are? They're the foaming agent. It makes your soap soapy. Okay, we don't have soapy soap anymore at my house, which is kind of weird. Yeah, it doesn't foam like it once did. But those soapy agents are cancer-causing too. They're endocrine disruptors. Endocrine disruptors are what wreck your hormones and lead to some of that cancer. Phthalates, which I'll talk about in a second, parabens, and triclosan. Those are the others you want to look at. Now, don't feel like you need to remember all this stuff because I've got a couple things for you here. Triclosan is an antimicrobial agent that goes into a lot of these soaps and potions. Do you guys know how much bacteria you have in your body at any moment? Any idea? Yeah, you got more bacteria in your body than you do regular cells. Your body is more outside of you than it is inside of you, which is kind of fascinating to think about. But here's the deal. If you take an antimicrobial, do you think that has an overall net benefit or net negative? Exactly. It's like the hand sanitizer. I'm not against it per se, but you got to understand the risks there. You're wiping out a large part of your immune system when you take that stuff because it's just killing everything. It's not just like, oh, you're good, you're bad. It's just killing everything. And when we use something like triclosan, we're wiping out a good majority of our bacteria in our body. And if you do that repeatedly, it just gets more and more challenging. Okay, that's triclosan. The phthalates and the parabens, they're going to, one is going to help keep the fragrance in. I can't remember, I think it's the phthalate. Yeah, I think that's the phthalate. And then the paraben essentially just keeps more of the fragrance. So both of those guys work together. Again, I'm against fragrance, okay? So I think none of that stuff should really be in our potions and our lotions. We got to make sure we're keeping track of that when you go to the store because the majority of stuff you find in the store is going to have that. I'll talk a little bit about what you can do as an option here in a second. Okay, and then water quality is another big one. If you're still drinking tap water, understand that that tap water isn't just clean, clear, pure stuff anymore. I don't know if it ever was, but I get people in here, oh, the tap water in Denver tastes great, or the tap water in Parker tastes great. Fine, and there's studies out there now, significant studies, long-term studies showing the risks of doing that consistently. I think it's really important you start putting some sort of a filter on your system. And it's not just the Brita water filter. If you want to be really conscious, it's not just Brita. There's a lot of inexpensive options out there. It doesn't have to be a $10,000 unit if you got a house. Don't do that. We got way easier, inexpensive options, but it isn't a $15 Brita water filter either, okay? There's a study that just got released on Parkinson's, and I actually have a couple people in here that, not tonight, but that have Parkinson's. It's going up. And one of the biggest studies shows that if you live 3 miles within a golf course range, you're 80% more likely for it. Do you know why that is? Yeah, all the pesticides, herbicides, fungicides that get on your body, but it's not just your body. It's actually like the golfers themselves aren't really showing it. It's the people living around it. And it's because of the water supply. That stuff gets in the water. They're not taking care of it. They're not treating it properly. And now we're coming down with these really significant neurological issues. Okay, and then lastly is EMFs. Now EMFs, hit or miss depending on the sources you look at in terms of is this dangerous or not. All my research points at yes, this is a real thing, and yes, it's dangerous. You got to be conscious about it. The stuff that says it isn't, you always look at the funding of where that research came from, and you got AT&T behind it, you got Verizon behind it, Comcast, whoever the big players are, Apple. If you're making the product or you're creating the service of Wi-Fi, chances are it's in your best interest to make sure no one thinks that this is a bad service. It's kind of like the pharmaceutical industry. They got all the money and they're trying to make sure that all their stuff doesn't get the bad publicity, if you will. Same thing comes here. So it's important to look outside of just what the research says, more about who created the research, who funded it. But EMFs are electromagnetic frequencies that you get from your cell phones, you get from your wireless routers, you get from your computers. Everything now is connected, even in your car. So we're swimming around, walking around in a toxic soup. And what the research shows is that your brain, it operates off waves. Those waves get distorted by these magnetic frequencies. It disrupts the balance. It disrupts the rhythm, which can affect your sleep, but it can affect your mood, your energy, and ultimately the body's function. And we live in it. So I'm going to talk about some strategies you guys can use here in a second to help limit some of that. So first and foremost, now I'm going to circle back and talk about each one of these topics that I've touched on here as far as toxicities are concerned. We talk about plastic. I already mentioned this, but I think glass containers would be the most advantageous thing you can start to implement right now. We can talk about clothes. I think in terms of clothes, one of the most important things, the shirts, the pants, whatever, it's more about the underwear. Okay, what's closest proximity to you? I'd encourage you getting cotton. Something of the earth, not fake and made by man. I talked about the weather app that I have on my iPhone. I don't know what the equivalent is on an Android. So for those of you guys who have Android, I don't know, my apologies. But I have found the EPA Air Now app, it's free, to be way more effective and more detailed. So I can go outside some days and my weather app will tell me that the air quality is great. And then I'll look at the EPA Air Now app and it'll say it's moderate to severe risk. I'm always going on the side of being very conscious of what potentially is out there. If it's high quality air or risky air, if it's risky air, I'm not going out there. If it's high quality, I'll go out there. But I'm using the EPA Air Now app because it's always more on that side. It's free, again, and I'd encourage all you guys to check that before you go do an exercise outside. If it's an exercise outside, do it inside if it's bad quality. We also have air purifiers in our home because every time you open up the door, if it's smoky outside, it's getting into your house, okay? And so I think it's important you have something there. We use what's called an air doctor. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of an air doctor. We've got one on the first floor and the second floor because they have a certain amount of space that they can filter through. The air doctor meets a couple standards or qualities that you want to look for. One is called HEPA, which helps you sort through it. It filters out dust, it filters out smoke, and it also filters out a lot of bacteria. Same thing when you talk about MERV. 8 to 13, this is a rating chart, MERV. Like if you look at it in a hospital is supposed to have at least 14 or above in terms of MERV rating. And MERV rating is just how dense is that filter, how good quality is it, how little are the microns of these little bacteria getting through. Because it's going to filter out majority of it. The problem with MERV, anything above a 14, is your house, your HVAC system probably isn't set up for it. So if you've got something higher up, it's actually going to jam up your filter, or your air quality. It's going to be harder for you to get circulation. So 8 to 13 is the recommended amount, but you want to have at least 18 or 8 to 13. You don't want to go anything lower than an 8. Okay, that's for any kind of filter. So whether you want to get an air doctor or some other brand, I'd encourage you to get HEPA, MERV 8 to 13, and get something that has a carbon filter. That's going to get rid of the majority of the smoke, dust, pollens, and microbes that could get into your air and affect how you're breathing, because you're living in that house. Okay? Same thing goes for the car. Gut mapping. I recently did this for myself. We did this for my newborn son. I think gut mapping is one of the most important things you could do in terms of testing. I'm all for testing. If you've been in my practice for any length of time, you know I'm constantly testing you. I do not let a lot of time go by before we know objectively how well you're doing. I care about what I think's going on, but I don't know everything. I don't have the opportunity to I don't have all the data in my head, and I can't possibly do it because I'm only human. We use tests to do that. Gut mapping is a test that looks at your microbiome. We just talked about how much bacteria you have in your gut. You got thousands of different strains of bacteria. You got trillions of bacteria. You got thousands of strains. You need to have the right amount of each of those strains in your gut regularly. So gut mapping is the way you do that. Essentially, it's just a map of what kind of bacteria you've got or don't got. I found out that I was low or deficient in one specific bacteria. I take probiotics, and I would recommend each one of you guys does too. But the probiotic I was taking happened to be deficient in the one bacteria that I was deficient in myself. So I've changed up the probiotic I'm using to just help boost my gut. And I encourage that for all of you guys. If you don't know what your gut's doing, your gut is your immune system, or a big part of it, about 80% of it. It's also what's helping you digest your food, and it's also what we call your second brain. So a lot of mood disorders, depression, anxiety, OCD, bipolar, there's a brain component to that, but there's a huge gut component. If your gut's unhealthy, chances are your brain will be too. And the problem with where we are in America today is we've done all this commercial farming where we've turned the soil over and over and over again. And even if you're eating organic fruits and vegetables, chances are you're not getting as much as you once did. And when I say as much, the soil that stuff's grown in, it used to have tons and tons of microbacteria that you would then ingest. It would get in your system and it would help your gut heal and help your gut function. But we don't get that anymore. And so even if you eat really organic stuff, you're probably not getting the bacteria you need. You need to be eating fermented foods, but I also think you should be doing a probiotic. I'm not a big pusher of supplements. I really don't believe in a lot of them. I think it's just additional stuff that it ends up being really expensive urine, okay? But probiotics, I think we really should be looking at, okay? But the only way to truly know is, what does your gut look like? Yes?
Could you recommend or tell us where you got in gut mapping?
Yeah, I've actually got these links. Yep. And my wife is the one that actually did this for me. She doesn't practice anymore, at least at this point, because she's busy with our kids. But she's starting to get more into gut mapping and the gut health. So she'd be the resource I'd point you to. Gut mapping, the cool thing about that is, once you've done it, you get a whole breakdown of what's going on. I also found that I had yeast, so I've had to work on some of that too, which is interesting. I never would have guessed that I had yeast, but I do. So I have to work on that too. All right, now the refillery. Visit the refillery. This has to do with your lotions, potions, and soaps. Okay, the refillery is what we found to be the best spot where you can get this stuff with no fragrance, and if it does, it's made with essential oils. They don't package it in plastic. They give you glass containers to put it in. It's a really cool operation. I don't think they make a lot of money. It's just a little hole in the wall. It's run by a nurse practitioner. She does a really good job with it, though. We found it to be really helpful. It's a ways away from here, though. It's off of Parker Road, and I believe it's called 20 Mile. So it's kind of like downtown Parker area. But it's called the refillery. And I've got little handouts if you like them. They're just breakdowns of what they do. There's a QR code there too for their website. That's where we go. My wife used to use something called Beauty Counter. That was the name of the product. I was trying to think of it. Beauty Counter. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of this, especially women. The problem is Beauty Counter, I believe, went out of business. Something happened with them. My wife doesn't use them anymore. So if you're wondering, what do I do for my skin? How do I keep it clean, healthy without using all the garbage? She prefers this brand called Oliveda. Okay, Oliveda. So that's where she's done that. I think that's an overseas brand, but they do a really good job keeping it clean and healthy. Okay, now as far as water filtration, there's two things I have at my house. You don't have to do what I do, but I'll tell you what I do. I've got a whole house water filter, and I've got a reverse osmosis machine. The reverse osmosis goes underneath my sink, okay? The whole house water filter is in my basement, and it keeps all the water clean. The whole house water filter only filters out certain things. It's not a system that stops up a bunch of water to clean out all the nitty gritty and then kicks out just a little bit of water. That's what the reverse osmosis machine does. It gets really expensive if you put a reverse osmosis machine going to your whole house. Okay, so I would encourage you not to do that. Just use that for your drinking water because it's going to get rid of all this stuff. When we talk about water, you've got your main ingredients like chlorine, lead, fluoride. Those are the things I don't want in my water. But another big one is antidepressants and other pharmaceuticals. Those are getting into the water supply too because people go to the bathroom, they urinate, that sometimes gets evaporated up into the air and then it comes back down in rain. And our filters in the systems that we have here in America, they don't filter that out at the city level, so it's getting into your house. So if you don't have a filter to get rid of that, they've found all kinds of low-grade pharmaceutical drugs in people that aren't taking them. So I encourage you to look at reverse osmosis machines for that reason. I'm a little bit further on the end of the spectrum than most people when it comes to health. Like I'll go a little bit further overboard, so it doesn't mean you need to, but I'd encourage you to look at the research in that road. Reverse osmosis machines are not terribly expensive for a good quality one, and neither, quite honestly, are whole house water filters, okay? The brand I use, I think I outfitted my whole house for under $2,000 for that. Now, just to be clear, there's people that I talk to that have spent $20,000 to $30,000 on a machine. I would not encourage you to do that. Right? My system is amazing. Everything we've done test-wise has shown that, so I wouldn't encourage you to go spend tons of money on that. When it comes to the EMFs, I'd encourage each of you guys to invest in a Wi-Fi timer. It's kind of like a light timer when you've got Christmas lights outside, something that's going to turn it on and off at nighttime as you sleep. Why do you need Wi-Fi as you sleep anyway? I don't know. Maybe you do. Not at our house. We turn it off. So 11 o'clock comes around, all the Wi-Fi goes down until we wake up in the morning. 5:30 is when we turn that back on. Okay, it's all timered, or all on a timer automatically, but that's the Wi-Fi. We also have EMF protectors, which that's my phone back there. You can see on my phone there's a little silver tab on it. That's an EMF protector. I've had that on there for years. It deadens some of the magnetic frequencies coming off of it. I think that piece of silver paper cost me about 50 to 60 bucks. I've got a link for that. That's not the only thing we have in our house. We also have devices that plug into the wall and they help to deaden some of that electromagnetic frequency as well. They're called EMF protectors. And I've got a link if you guys want to use the company we've used. It's called Therisage. There's all kinds of different devices out there, but we found those to be really effective. We've done a lot of research on that. And then I talked about the lotions. This goes kind of hand in hand with the refillery, but the parabens, the phthalates, the triclosans, the sulfates, the fragrances. I didn't talk about aluminum. I didn't talk about formaldehyde. Formaldehyde's in a lot of these soaps as well. Formaldehyde is just an embalming fluid. It's what they put in dead people to keep them from disintegrating so much. They put that in the soaps too, so it just sticks around longer. I'd encourage you guys to avoid that. It's cancer causing. Aluminum goes in a lot of these antiperspirants. If you're using an antiperspirant, I don't know what your reason is, but I'd encourage you to look at it again and please stop, because aluminum is going to stop up your pores. Antiperspirant essentially means you don't perspire. It stops you. You still perspire, it just doesn't get out of your body. It's essentially you putting the trash out in your trash can in your garage and never taking it out. It just sits there and stinks and rots and starts to get worse and worse and worse. You're supposed to perspire. It's okay to sweat. Get rid of it. It's the garbage. Get rid of it. Don't let it sit there. And aluminum is what it helps to keep those pores clogged and not allow things out. All right, so avoid that if possible. Okay, now that's the toxicities. The deficiency is going to move a little bit faster because you guys should know this stuff, and if you don't, we're going to go through it. The first one is here, nutrition. In my office, I've created seminars around what each of you guys are potentially deficient in, and I find that most people are deficient in multiple of these. But nutrition is one of the bigger ones. If you don't have access to nutrition yet, it's because you haven't been with me for more than 30 days, because we leak them out now every 30 days, or you haven't checked your vault. So if you need more access, you want to get back into it, ask Lexi. She can resend you the email that gives you the login information, and you can log in and get your Prime Nutrition module. It's got a PDF manual of everything I talk in the recording. There's a recording of me talking. There's also a grocery list and other resources that give you guys some ideas of where you can start eating better and how to start eating better. I wouldn't encourage any of you guys to go 100% cold turkey off the garbage and get just 100% clean, because I don't think that's sustainable. I really don't. I've never seen anybody in my life or in my office pull that off. But if you've got 80% of your life going towards eating pretty good, and the small 20% going towards a little bit of off track to keep you honest. I think that's a healthy diet, healthy balance. And that's what we propose in that nutrition manual. So that's what I'd encourage. If you haven't checked it out, do it. Because if you're not eating well, if you're deficient in good food, you can't possibly be as healthy as you're supposed to be. Same thing comes from movement. Most people are deficient in movement. You need to be moving, but you need to be doing it the right way. I'm not encouraging you guys to go do a CrossFit exercise. I don't see a lot of people in here who want to do that, but I would encourage you to do CrossFit. Orange Theory is fine too, but the problem with Orange Theory, you're there for 45 minutes and then you're done. What are you doing for the other 23 and some hours? Do you know how many hours the average American is static for? 21 and a half hours. Sitting and sleeping, 21 and a half hours is static. There's not a lot of movement in that day. What I'd encourage each one of you guys to do is move a little more, throughout the day. It doesn't have to be extreme. The corrective exercises that I go over that are kind of like the basics of what we do here, those are a great start. Doesn't mean that's all of it. You need to be doing more, but that's a great start. If you just did that, a couple minutes here and there every day, that would make a big difference. The 3 parts of movement are strength, mobility, and cardio. I find women are really heavy on cardio. Cardio is the least important by far. The most important is strength. The second most important is mobility. And if you look at the longevity of life in terms of humans, the most important thing that makes your life long is strength. You got strength, life expectancy goes up. If you got good mobility, same thing. Yep.
Where do you put balance in strength and mobility?
I would group that in together. I would say strength is probably the main component of balance, but balance also has a factor of your ear, your inner ear, and your neurology. So it's not all just strength and movement. It's also neurology and inner ear function. That's a little bit more there. Okay, second or third thing is sleep. Sleep's another one that most people are deficient in. 6 to 8 hours is kind of the range, but it's got to be good quality sleep. Not just waking up every 3 hours to go to the bathroom or tossing and turning. If you're not getting good quality sleep, that impacts a lot of different things. Not just your nervous system in here, which it will, but a lot of other things in your life. Hormone balance, mood, energy, longevity. Sleep's a big one. If you've never checked out my sleep seminar, here's another plug for that one. It might be your mattress, it might be your pillow, it might be your position, and it might be the time leading up to when you go to bed. That last hour, if you're on your phone or your iPad or your TV, you can't expect your hormones to start to calm down by the time it's ready for bed. You might fall asleep, but that doesn't mean you get into a deep stage of sleep, because there's stages to sleep. Once you get to the REM stage, that's where your heart slows down and your brain slows down and your body can actually heal. But you're not going to get there if you're constantly stimulated. Your brain thinks that light is still the sun. So it's confused. It's like, what time are we at? Is this daytime? Because it's going to react that way, and it's going to create hormones, synthesize hormones. They're going to keep you up and make it harder for you to get to those deeper stages. So stop with the technology. It's part of the Wi-Fi timer, quite honestly. It stops that. You can't even use it. And then you set it down and you calm down and hopefully go to sleep and get deep, restful sleep. This is a big one. We call this prime mindset in here, but it's the social, the fulfillment, and the emotional health factor. If you look at the studies of these blue zones are the places where people are living to be 100 more than any other place in the world, like Japan, for example, has multiple. If you look at those people, some of them smoke, some of them drink. There's a lot of different things that they're doing. That's not the common factor. The common factor between all these groups is that they've got at least 6 to 8 really significant social interactions. So they've got friends, and a lot of really deep friends. That's what drives longevity more than anything. So if you were to change anything, that would be the bigger one, is making more friends, communicating with people, just having deep, meaningful relationships, and getting fulfillment. I see in my office a lot of people struggling with their spine and their nervous system, and they are not getting a lot of fulfillment. Whether it's from their office and their work or from their life and their relationships, they're struggling with meaning and what they want to do with their life. That's a big factor for your nervous system health, and it's a big factor for your overall health. So I think that's a big factor in everything we're talking about tonight. And then lastly, this is where I come in. This is what most people don't even think about. It's the nutrition that's getting to your nervous system. Your nervous system needs nutrition to run well. And 80% of it comes from motion of your spine. That's what I do. I did not get into this profession to treat back pain. I care about pain. I want people to feel better. It's not what I do. The people that have been with me for 5 or 6 years, they understand that. I care about your nervous system because your nervous system runs everything. And pain is one of the pieces that happens if you don't have a healthy one, but there's also digestive issues and hormone imbalance and blood pressure issues and all the other things that happen if your nervous system isn't working well. And the only way to truly ensure that happens is to make sure your spine moves. And this is only getting harder and harder because of all the technology we've got. Because you guys are on your phones, you're at your computers, or you're sitting watching a screen, and that's where the joints start to restrict. And it's not about your spine getting stuck. I care about that. I want you flexible. But that's not why I'm doing what I'm doing. I'm not a flexologist. I want your nervous system working better. And your nervous system doesn't work good if your spine's stuck and restricted. And I think that's important for everybody to know. Okay? All right. Now, this is the resource tab. If you guys pull out your phone and point it at this screen, and if you don't, I'm going to send this to you in email too. You're just going to have to wait on it because I'm going to take this recording, package it up so you guys got it if you want to rewatch it, and I will also include these resources. But in that resource tab, you're going to find everything that I talked about. Transparently, there's some links in there that I am an affiliate with. I think the affiliate link is the Therasage link. So if you don't want me earning money, don't use my link. But my link is in there. There's all the other links I don't believe I am an affiliate with. There's a link also for those of you guys who are interested in gut mapping. My wife, Dr. Lauren, she's the one that handles that for us, and she's starting to do more and more of that. So if you want information on how that works, what it looks like, etc., just reach out to her via email. She'll respond to you and take it from there. And then if you're interested in the refillery, this is the refillery. I'll pass these around. If you choose to go there or not, no big deal, no harm, no foul. I'm not an affiliate of the refillery, but I think it's a really good option for those of you guys who are normally getting your soaps and products from, say, Target or Walmart, where I'm almost guaranteeing you're going to get all that garbage that I just mentioned, okay? So I'll pass these around. If you want to take one, take one. And then at this point, I'm going to take questions. Yep, what do you got,
How do you
Emily?
feel about Dr. Bronner's soap?
I know what you're talking about. I can't say that I've ever looked at the back of it. I don't know what it has and what it doesn't have. Here,
It's supposed to be a clean, it's
okay.
not steel.
Okay. Well, and on that note, if it is, it's not going to have the things I just mentioned. So that's the biggest thing. Look at those big ones: phthalates, sulfates, parabens, fragrance. If it's got those things, chances are it could be better. Doesn't mean you don't use it, but
No, I don't think it has all that.
okay, good. Yeah. I generally stay away from any of the mainstream brands because if it's mainstream, they're probably optimizing the pricing and everything else they can, and it's probably not going to have the best ingredient. I was talking to somebody about Chipotle earlier today. I had no idea. I don't follow Chipotle. Chipotle apparently was sold to McDonald's a while ago or Taco Bell. I would imagine that's probably where things went south on them. Really? Okay. Well, and you can probably understand that analogy. That's the same thing for any of these soap brands.